What happens when two of country music's biggest powerhouses sit down for what should be a friendly chat, but instead ignites into one of the most explosive talk show moments in recent memory? Well, you're about to find out exactly how a simple interview question turned into a full-blown confrontation that left everyone in the studio speechless and Miranda Lambert storming off set. This is the inside story of what really went down when these two superstars clashed like never before. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because this story is absolutely wild from start to finish. The Kelly Clarkson show was buzzing with its usual energy as Kelly settled into her chair, her signature warm smile beaming toward the cameras. The audience was particularly excited for this episode, knowing they were about to witness a conversation between two of the most successful female artists in country and pop music. Miranda Lambert, looking effortlessly cool in her black leather jacket and boots, sat across from Kelly with that familiar, confident smirk that her fans knew so well. Welcome back to the show, everyone, and I am so thrilled to have the incredible Miranda Lambert here with us today, Kelly said, her voice carrying that genuine enthusiasm she was known for. Miranda, it's been way too long since we've had a chance to really sit down and catch up. Miranda leaned back in her chair, adjusting her position with a casual air. Well, Kelly, you know how it is. We've both been pretty busy conquering the music world in our own ways, she replied, her Texas draw evident as she flashed a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The audience laughed politely, but there was something in Miranda's tone that Kelly seemed to pick up on immediately. Her media training kicked in as she maintained her bright demeanor. Absolutely. And speaking of conquering, your latest album has been doing incredible numbers. But I have to ask, and I hope you don't mind me being direct, there's been some buzz about your recent comments regarding artists who cross over from country to pop. Care to elaborate on that for our audience? Miranda's smile faltered for just a moment before returning, though now it carried a sharper edge. Oh, you mean when I said that some artists seem to forget their roots the moment they get a taste of mainstream success? I think that was pretty clear, don't you? The tension in the studio was palpable now. Kelly's production team could be seen exchanging glances from behind the cameras, sensing that this interview was about to take an unexpected turn. Kelly herself seemed momentarily caught off guard, but quickly regrouped, her professional instincts taking over. Well, I think what's beautiful about music is how it can evolve and reach different audiences, Kelly responded diplomatically, though her voice carried just a hint of defensiveness. I mean, artists like yourself have experimented with different sounds throughout your career, too. Experimented? Sure, Miranda said, her voice taking on a cooler tone. But there's a difference between growing as an artist and completely abandoning everything that made you who you are just to chase radio play and pop charts. Some people seem to have forgotten that distinction. The audience was now completely silent. The usual chatter and movement that typically filled commercial breaks nowhere to be found. Kelly's smile remained in place, but anyone watching closely could see the slight tightening around her eyes. Miranda, I feel like there might be something more specific you want to say here, Kelly said, leaning forward slightly. Because it sounds like you have someone particular in mind with these comments. Miranda let out a short laugh, but there was no humor in it. Do I? I think I've been pretty general in my observations about the industry. But since you're pushing the topic, Kelly, maybe we should talk about authenticity. What does it mean to stay true to your sound versus chasing whatever's trendy? I think authenticity is subjective, Kelly replied, her voice still controlled, but with an edge creeping in. What feels authentic to one artist might feel limiting to another. Growth and evolution are natural parts of any creative journey. Growth? Absolutely. Miranda nodded, but her expression remained skeptical. But when that growth looks suspiciously like a complete image makeover designed to appeal to the widest possible audience, well, that starts to look less like artistic evolution and more like calculated marketing. Kelly's composure was beginning to crack. Are you suggesting that artists who find success across multiple genres are being inauthentic? Because that seems like a pretty narrow view of what music can be. I'm suggesting that some artists seem to develop convenient amnesia about where they came from, Miranda shot back, her voice rising slightly. One day they're singing about small towns and heartbreak. The next day they're on stage in sequin outfits talking about empowerment and pop anthems like country music was just a stepping stone. The camera operators were having a field day, capturing every micro-expression and gesture as the tension continued to escalate. Kelly's usual warmth was replaced by something much more guarded and defensive. Well, Miranda, I think it's interesting that you mentioned stepping stones, because isn't success about opening doors and exploring new opportunities? Or should artists limit themselves to stay in boxes that make other people comfortable? Miranda's eyes flashed with something dangerous. There's nothing wrong with success, Kelly, but there's something to be said for remembering the people in the community that supported you before you became a household name. Some artists seem to think they can just reinvent themselves and pretend their past never happened. And some artists seem to think they can gatekeep entire genres and decide who deserves to be where. Kelly fired back, her professional mask finally slipping completely. Music isn't about purity tests or staying in your lane because other people think that's where you belong. The studio had become electric with tension. Crew members were frozen in place, unsure whether to intervene or let this unprecedented moment play out. Miranda leaned forward, her voice dropping to a more intense register. You know what, Kelly, you're right. Music isn't about purity tests, but it is about respect. Respect for the genre that gave you your start. Respect for the fans who supported you when nobody else would. And respect for the artists who paved the way before you decided country music wasn't glamorous enough anymore. Kelly's face flushed red, and for a moment it looked like she might lose her composure entirely. Instead, she took a deep breath and looked directly into Miranda's eyes. I have nothing but respect for country music and country artists. But I also have respect for my own artistic journey and my right to make music that feels true to me, regardless of what genre purists think about it. Artistic journey, Miranda repeated, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Is that what we're calling it now? The silence that followed Miranda's sarcastic comment was deafening. Kelly's jaw clenched visibly as she processed what had just been said, and the audience seemed to collectively hold their breath, sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented unfold in real time. You know what, Miranda? Kelly said, her voice now carrying a steel edge that her fans rarely heard. I think we need to address the elephant in the room here because it sounds like you have some very specific feelings about my career choices, and I think our audience deserves to hear this conversation without all the coded language. Miranda's eyebrows raised and she settled back in her chair with the confident posture of someone who had been waiting for exactly this moment. Finally, some honesty. Yes, Kelly. I do have feelings about watching artists abandon the community that built them the moment Hollywood comes calling. I have feelings about watching people distance themselves from country music like it's something to be embarrassed about. Abandon? Kelly's voice cracked slightly with emotion. Miranda, I have never abandoned anything. Country music gave me incredible opportunities, and I'm grateful for that. But I'm also a human being with a voice that doesn't fit into one neat category. And I refuse to apologize for that. Grateful, Miranda repeated, shaking her head. That's interesting because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you couldn't wait to shed that country girl image and become America's pop sweetheart. Tell me, when was the last time you played a country festival? When was the last time you collaborated with a country artist who wasn't already crossover friendly? Kelly's hands were trembling slightly now. Whether from anger or hurt was impossible to tell. I collaborate with artists who inspire me and whose music speaks to me. I don't make decisions based on genre politics or what Miranda Lambert thinks I should be doing with my career. Genre politics? Miranda laughed, but there was no warmth in the sound. Kelly, this isn't about politics. This is about loyalty. This is about remembering where you came from instead of treating your past like a phase you grew out of. My past isn't a phase, Kelly shot back, her voice rising. My past is part of my story, but it doesn't define my limits. And frankly, I'm shocked that another female artist would sit here and try to shame me for the choices I've made. Shouldn't we be supporting each other instead of tearing each other down? Miranda's expression hardened. Support goes both ways, Kelly. And it's hard to support someone who seems to think they're too good for the genre that discovered them. You want to talk about supporting female artists? How about supporting the female country artists who are still fighting for radio play while you're out there acting like country music was just your opening act? The production team was in full crisis mode now, with producers frantically whispering into their headsets and crew members looking like they wanted to disappear. The audience sat in stunned silence, some looking uncomfortable, others clearly riveted by the drama unfolding before them. I have never ever acted like country music was beneath me, Kelly said, her voice shaking with emotion. That is completely unfair, and you know it. I've always spoken respectfully about my time in country music and the people I worked with. Respectfully distant, Miranda countered. There's a difference between respect and genuine connection. Kelly, when you talk about country music now, You sound like you're talking about a job you used to have, not a community you were part of. Kelly's professional composure was cracking more with each exchange. Maybe that's because some people in that community made it very clear that there wasn't room for artists who wanted to explore beyond traditional boundaries. Maybe that's because I got tired of being told I wasn't country enough by people who apparently think they own the definition. Nobody owns country music, Miranda said firmly. But some of us actually stick around to fight for it instead of jumping ship the moment we get a better offer. Some of us care enough about the genre to stay and help it grow instead of using it as a launching pad for bigger and better things. That is so unfair. Kelly's voice was now openly emotional. You have no idea what my journey has been like or what decisions I've had to make. You don't get to sit there and judge my choices like you know what it's like to be in my position. Your position? Miranda's tone turned incredulous. Kelly, your position is that you got everything country music had to offer and then moved on when it was convenient. My position is that I've stayed here through the good times and the struggles, supporting new artists and fighting for the integrity of this music. Kelly stood up abruptly, her chair rolling back slightly. I cannot believe we're having this conversation. I came here to talk about music and celebrate what we've both accomplished, and instead you're attacking me for choices I made years ago that have nothing to do with you. Miranda remained seated, but her posture was tense and ready. Everything successful country artists do affects the community. Kelly, your choices sent a message about what country music is worth, and that message wasn't particularly flattering. My choices were about my art and my life, Kelly said, her voice now shaking with anger. I don't owe anyone an explanation for following my creative instincts, and I certainly don't owe you one. The fact that you think I do says more about your insecurities than it does about my career. Insecurities? Miranda's voice went dangerously quiet. Kelly, I'm not insecure about anything. I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed that an artist I once respected has spent years distancing herself from the very community that gave her a platform. Distancing myself, Kelly's voice reached a new pitch. Miranda, I've been nothing but gracious about my time in country music, but apparently that's not enough for you. Apparently, I'm supposed to limit my entire artistic identity to make you feel better about your own choices. Miranda finally stood up, matching Kelly's energy. This isn't about making me feel better. This is about integrity. This is about understanding that when you achieve success in a genre, you have a responsibility to that community that goes beyond just being gracious in interviews. Responsibility. Kelly threw her hands up. My responsibility is to my art, to my fans, and to my own truth, not to your definition of what a country artist should be or do. The tension in the room had reached a breaking point. Both women were standing now, facing each other across the coffee table that separated their chairs, their voices carrying throughout the silent studio. Maybe that's the problem right there, Miranda said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. When your responsibility stops at yourself, you lose sight of the bigger picture. You lose sight of what it means to be part of something larger than your individual success. Kelly's face was flushed with anger and emotion. And maybe your problem is that you think everyone has to follow your blueprint for what being a country artist means. Newsflash, Miranda. There's more than one way to honor your roots while still growing as an artist. Growing as an artist doesn't require abandoning your community, Miranda fired back. But I guess we'll just have to agree to disagree on that point, won't we? The words hung in the air like a challenge, and Kelly's expression shifted from hurt to something much more dangerous. She took a step closer to Miranda, her voice dropping to a level that somehow felt more threatening than when she was shouting. No, Miranda. We're not going to agree to disagree because you've spent this entire interview making passive-aggressive comments and thinly veiled accusations, and I'm done pretending this is a civil conversation. Miranda crossed her arms, meeting Kelly's intense gaze without backing down. Finally, some real talk. I was wondering when you dropped the talk show host act and show some actual backbone. Backbone? Kelly's voice was incredulous. You want to see backbone? Here's some backbone for you. You've been sitting in my chair on my show, insulting me and my choices for the past 20 minutes. And you think I don't have backbone because I tried to keep this professional. Professional would have been addressing these issues privately instead of letting resentment build up for years, Miranda shot back. But I guess that would have required you to actually engage with the country music community instead of just sending polite thank you notes from your pop music ivory tower. Kelly's laugh was sharp and bitter. Ivory tower. Miranda, you don't know anything about my life or my struggles. You think because I found success outside of country music that everything has been handed to me on a silver platter. I think you found an easier path and took it, Miranda said bluntly. And I think you've spent years justifying that choice by acting like country music was holding you back instead of admitting that you just wanted broader appeal. Broader appeal. Kelly's voice was rising again, all pretense of composure gone. You think I left country music for broader appeal? I left country music because people like you made it clear that there was only one acceptable way to be a country artist. And God forbid you didn't fit perfectly into that mold. Miranda's eyes flashed. People like me? Kelly, I have supported more diverse voices in country music than you ever did. The difference is, I stayed to fight for change instead of running away when things got difficult. Running away? Kelly took another step forward, and now the two women were separated by only a few feet. I didn't run away from anything. I ran toward opportunities that excited me and challenges that pushed me as an artist. But apparently in your world, that makes me a traitor. In my world, that makes you someone who takes what they need and moves on without looking back, Miranda replied, her voice steady, but her eyes blazing. You got your start. You got your platform. You got your initial fan base. And then you decided they weren't enough for you anymore. Kelly's hands were clenched into fists at her sides. That is the most unfair, reductive, insulting interpretation of my career that I have ever heard. You're taking a complex artistic journey and turning it into some kind of betrayal narrative that exists only in your head. Does it exist only in my head? Miranda challenged. Because I'm not the only country artist who's noticed your convenient absence from our community. I'm just the only one willing to say it to your face. The production team was in full panic mode now, with the show's producer frantically gesturing to try to get the women's attention, but both artists were completely focused on each other, oblivious to everything else happening in the studio. My absence? Kelly's voice cracked with emotion. Miranda, I was never truly welcomed into that community to begin with. Half the industry spent years questioning whether I belonged there, and the other half treated me like a novelty act. So forgive me if I didn't stick around to keep fighting for acceptance from people who clearly never wanted to give it. Nobody handed me acceptance either, Miranda fired back. The difference is, I earned it by proving my commitment over and over again. You gave up the first time things got challenging. I gave up. Kelly's voice went dangerously quiet. I gave up, or I refused to spend my entire career trying to prove myself to people who had already decided I didn't belong. There's a difference between giving up and recognizing when you're beating your head against a wall. Miranda shook her head dismissively. That's exactly what I'm talking about. The moment you faced real resistance, real criticism, you decided the problem was with country music instead of looking at whether you were actually committed to being part of the community. The problem was with people like you, Kelly exploded, her professional mask completely shattered now. People who think they get to decide who's country enough and who isn't. People who act like gatekeepers instead of welcoming fellow artists. You want to know why I left? Look in the mirror. Miranda's expression turned ice cold. So now it's my fault that you couldn't handle being part of a genre that requires authenticity and genuine connection to the music. It's my fault that you chose the easier path of pop stardom instead of doing the work to earn your place in country music. Earn my place. Kelly's voice was shaking with rage. I had hit songs. I had devoted fans. I had critical acclaim. What exactly did I need to do to earn my place that I hadn't already done? Get your personal approval? You needed to show that you were in it for more than just what you could get out of it, Miranda said coldly. You needed to demonstrate that you cared about the genre as much as the genre had helped your career. Instead, you treated it like a stepping stone. Kelly was trembling now, whether from anger or hurt was impossible to determine. I cannot believe the level of arrogance it takes to sit there and lecture me about my own career and my own motivations. You don't know me, Miranda. You don't know my heart. You don't know my struggles. And you certainly don't know my love for music. I know what I see, Miranda replied, unmoved by Kelly's emotional state. And what I see is an artist who used country music when it was convenient and abandoned it when something better came along. If that's not what happened, then maybe you should have made different choices. That was the final straw. Kelly's face went through a series of expressions, hurt, anger, disbelief, before settling on something that looked like resolve. She turned away from Miranda and looked directly at her production team. That's it, she said, her voice suddenly calm in a way that was somehow more alarming than when she was shouting. We're done here. Cut the cameras. Miranda's eyebrows shot up. Oh, So now you're going to shut down the conversation. How very mature of you, Kelly. Kelly whirled back around, her eyes blazing. Mature? You want to talk about mature? Mature would have been having this conversation privately if you actually cared about resolution. Mature would have been approaching this with good faith instead of coming on my show to ambush me with years of built-up resentment. I came on your show to promote my album, Miranda said, though her tone suggested she was enjoying this confrontation more than she was letting on. You're the one who brought up crossover artists and authenticity. I just answered your questions honestly. Honestly, Kelly let out a laugh that sounded more like a sob. Miranda, you came here with an agenda. You came here to make me look bad, and to make yourself look like the guardian of country music integrity. Well, congratulations. You got your moment. Miranda stood up straighter, her voice taking on a triumphant edge. I got my moment to speak truth about what loyalty and commitment actually mean in this industry. If that makes you uncomfortable, maybe you should ask yourself why. Kelly looked at Miranda for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice was steady, but filled with unmistakable finality. Miranda, I need you to leave my show right now. This interview is over. Miranda's smile was sharp and satisfied. Gladly, I think I've said everything I needed to say anyway. As Miranda began to walk toward the exit, she paused and turned back for one final comment. You know, Kelly, for someone who's supposedly so confident in their choices, you sure do get defensive quickly when someone questions them. Kelly didn't respond, but her silence spoke volumes as Miranda Lambert walked off the set of the Kelly Clarkson show, leaving behind one of the most explosive talk show moments in recent memory. The studio remained in stunned silence for several minutes after Miranda's departure, with Kelly still standing in the same spot, staring at the space where Miranda had been. Finally, she looked at her crew and said quietly, "Let's go to commercial." So there you have it. The incredible true story of how a routine interview turned into one of the most dramatic confrontations television has ever seen. What started as what should have been a friendly chat between two successful artists became a full-blown battle over authenticity, loyalty, and what it really means to stay true to your roots in the music industry. Make sure to subscribe for more incredible stories like this one. And let me know in the comments, do you think Miranda was right to call Kelly out, or did she cross the line? I want to hear your thoughts on this absolutely wild situation.